I wasn't recording any of that. Okay, so I'm gonna start over. I'll say it again. Earlier, we were on the Slack chat, a few of us, and we were talking about the soul mirrors, and improving yourself, and eventually we began talking about like mastery of skills and how to apply that, and something about the conversation stuck with me, and I was sleeping, and I just had been thinking about it all day, and as you can see, I woke up. I was sleeping and I was falling asleep. I was falling asleep. I was just about asleep, and I had these thoughts running through my head, and then I was like, oh my gosh, like I had something that related to the conversation earlier, and I wanted to tell Erdem, is basically why I decided to get on video. But I thought it was an important thought. So we were talking about the learning of a skill, and the application of a skill, and Erdem had this thought, like he believed, because we were talking about Aristotle's golden mean between deficiency and excess, and how the mean between those two, personality-wise, is where you get virtue. And Erdem had the thought that somehow that golden mean related to the Fibonacci sequence. And the Fibonacci sequence also has a golden mean. It's a ratio. I know it's hard to hear me. It's because there's a highway right here, but I'm going to just talk over it. So the Fibonacci sequence is... So it begins with 1, and you add 1 to 1, and it becomes 2. Then you add 1 to 2, it becomes 3. 2 to 3, 5. 3 and 5, 8. So it's a progression. And there's something special about it, because I was thinking, okay, so a skill is an action. And it's an action that you can be good or bad at. So it's an action where learning how to do it is also an action. There's a trying. So when you're trying to learn a skill, I didn't understand what Erdem was talking about the mean. When like the mean of how much you practice and how much your learning comes into play. I was arguing that it isn't a mean that has to do with learning a skill. It is a sum. So it's how much I practice equals my skill. And Erdem, we didn't really have a solid thought, but that's why I'm getting on the video, because I had a solid thought, and it made sense. So we're talking about, the advancement of a skill, and why it's what ratio has to do with it, what the Fibonacci sequence has to do with it. And the Fibonacci sequence, like I just said, it's 1 plus 1 equals 2, 1 plus 2 equals 3. So you add the number that is before the sum to the sum, and it makes the next number, and you keep doing that on and on and on. And that's the Fibonacci sequence. It makes the golden spiral, the golden ratio. So how that applies to learning a skill, I was thinking about that. I was kind of thinking about it a lot all day, and it just didn't make sense. It seemed like it should make sense, but I couldn't figure it out. So I was just thinking about it, contemplating on it, like how would ratio, as opposed to a sum, apply to learning a skill? Then I was thinking about what the Fibonacci sequence is. The Fibonacci sequence has no 0. It starts as monad and monad. 1 and 1 equals 2. So it's generation. It's being. So it begins with being, and then being adds to being, and it makes 2. So it's the ratio that displays when a thing comes its first motion. When a thing comes into being, and it perfectly comes into being, there's that spiral, there's that golden ratio of the relation between the first being and the being after it and the being after that, and it's all connected. So there's a proportion to being. there's a perfect proportion to being, and that's the mean. That's the golden mean. It's the perfect proportion. So when you apply that to learning a skill, what is that? So you practice a skill, and you practice it X amount of times. You're learning a skill, and there's a sum of learning. So I learned this thing, and then I learned the next thing, and now I know two things. And that you follow what I'm saying, where you are gaining a value when you're learning a skill. Something is happening that is increasing your knowledge of what it is to perform that skill well. And then I was like, how do you apply, where does the golden mean? Why is there something besides a sum to that? And I thought the golden mean is proportion. So when I practice a skill, I practice a skill X amount of times, and then I practice it X amount of times more. The mean of that skill will be where I am actually at, the proportion that I have learned of what there is to learn, and that it's humility, perfect proportion, understanding that I've practiced this and I've learned this, and this is the mean between the two, and here is where I am. And humility makes you a perfect student, because you understand where you're at and what you need to learn, what you don't know, what you do know, where your ignorance lies and where your knowledge lies. And that's the golden mean of mastering a skill. That's the golden mean of learning. The proportion that you are to what you are doing. Does that make sense? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.